All right, so here is another article. So if you missed the first one, I talked about folinic acid for autism. And this is another article. This is actually a little bit older article from 2018 that talks about the same thing. Their study was a little bit differently, but I'm just going to kind of walk through it. This was from 2018 in molecular psychiatry. Basically, they gave participants folinic acid, and it was another randomized double-blind placebo-controlled trial, which is the gold standard of trials, because both the investigators don't know who's getting what, nor do the children or families, and so that eliminates a lot of the biases that we see. If the investigators know that one kid is getting it and one isn't, then they're more likely, if it supports their study, to score that child differently. We are all human, and we all have those biases. A couple of different things they remark in just the big picture is that there's no significant difference in adverse events between the two groups, and that treatment with high-dose folinic acid for 12 weeks, this was just 12 weeks, not a longer study like the newer one that I talked about earlier, resulted in improvement in verbal communication as compared with placebo, particularly in those participants who were study positive, I cannot talk, for folate receptor autoantibodies. And so getting into the nuts and bolts of this, this study talks a little bit more about the way that folate, which is a B vitamin, has been linked to autism, and that supplementation with folate during the prenatal and conception periods has shown to lower the risk of autism in offspring, and that specifically what we see in a lot of children with autism is that they have these folate receptor autoantibodies, and the blocking of these by the antibodies interferes with the binding of folate to the receptors, and then that lowers their cerebral folate levels. Pardon the birds in the background. I'm at my kid's soccer practice and just kind of going through this study. In general, they looked and they found that like 60% and 60% and 44% were positive for blocking and binding autoantibodies, respectively. The regular in the general population of healthy adults is 4 to 5%, and in developmentally delayed non-autistic children, 3%. So way higher at 60 and 44% than the 3% that's reported in developmentally delayed non-autistic children. And they, in some studies, have looked at children. They've done a lumbar puncture and found low CSF folate levels. 23% of children with autism had low CSF folate levels. And so all of this says, well, maybe if we increase their folate in their CSF, which folinic acid is one of the ways that we can do that. I think they talk about that later here, why folinic acid is a good choice for that it would improve their autism symptoms. And this study and the one that I talked about earlier both did show that. So looking at the materials and methods, this is a 2-arm double-blind placebo-controlled trial in Arkansas. Let's see, I'm not going to go through all these things. This is just their dosing, 2 milligrams per kilogram per day. The age range was 3 to 14. Basically, they not to get into all this, but the inclusion and exclusion criteria for both of the studies, this study and the other one that I talked about, were that you had to be diagnosed with autism, you couldn't have medications on board that interfered with folate, or a bunch of other complementary alternative medicines at the same time, or no big changes in any antipsychotics or behavioral medications during the time. They didn't want a child that's going on and off different medicines to try and get control of things to be in the study and have that affect the results if they have other confounding things. These are some big tables, and then we're going to get to the results here. It was nice. They had 25% participants were randomized in the placebo and 23 in the folinic acid group, and most of them stuck with it the whole time of the study, over 90%. What they noted, the primary outcome was improvement in verbal communication was significantly greater for participants on the folinic acid as compared with participants in the placebo, and then improvement in verbal communication was significantly greater in participants of the same folinic acid as compared with those on placebo, for participants with abnormal folate metabolism. So even more so in those children that were known to be positive for those autoantibodies. Other outcomes that they looked at were, first and foremost, like the symptom questionnaire: irritability, lethargy, stereotyped behaviors, hyperactivity, inappropriate speech, and total score on the ABC significantly improved in the folinic acid group compared with the placebo group. This is just another symptom screening tool. Let's see here. So it talks here specifically, and I wanted to kind of deep dive on this a little bit, about folinic acid and how that might work. First, folinic acid can normalize folate-dependent 1-carbon metabolism. Unlike folic acid, the common oxidized synthetic form can readily enter the folate cycle without being reduced, so it doesn't have to go through another step there. And then the biggest one is folinic acid can cross the blood-brain barrier using the reduced folate carrier when the receptor is blocked by other antibodies or is non-functional due to mitochondrial dysfunction or genetic mutations. So folinic acid is able to cross through that blood-brain barrier in a different way. So giving that instead of regular folate or folic acid can make a bigger difference for this third mechanism here. The study, they did talk about some of the limitations. First of all, the small sample size, and then that then this isn't really a limitation, but they then go on to talk about how only 2 drugs have been approved in the United States for autism. Both are antipsychotic drugs. There are other drugs that we often use that are not antipsychotics to help manage behaviors in children with autism. But these antipsychotics, as it says here, within 12 weeks can detrimentally affect lipid, cholesterol, and glucose metabolism, resulting in body weight gain, a lot of metabolic issues that go on with that. And then this study supports the notion that measurement of these antibodies may be helpful for predicting response. The other study showed that, yes, it does help as well, but it's not necessarily required. And then the conclusion of the study, which I didn't highlight, was that high-dose folinic acid resulted in improvement in the measures of verbal communication as compared with placebo. And so this just adds more to the idea that folinic acid may be helpful in children with autism. And so I just kind of wanted to walk through that study as well. Would love any comments or questions. Like I said in the other article, I'm definitely looking into this more and more because I have a lot of children in my practice with autism, and I do love helping them in whatever ways we can, and making sure that they get set up for success in life is really important to me, and this might help, and it's a vitamin, so it gives me a lot of confidence that it's not going to cause as major adverse effects, and that the risk is low and the potential outcome is rather high.